The first half of the 20th century shaped Black Americans' identity and influence in the United States. In reaction to racist actions and laws in that period, Black neighborhoods provided a sense of belonging, serving as a space not only to garner wealth, but also to create Black culture in a unique and authentic way. During this time, a Black cultural identity began to emerge, but Black Americans were still significantly affected by key events such as Jim Crow, segregation, and desegregation. Many of these communities disintegrated because of factors such as gentrification, redlining, and just outright racism, while others continued to rebuild and evolve. However, the history of these neighborhoods have often been hidden and not fully recognized. Today in this video, we will take a look at some of the thriving Black communities that developed across the country where African American businesses, districts flourished and served as examples of Black economic self-empowerment. Tulsa, Oklahoma is home of the Greenwood District, also known as Black Wall Street. It is one of the most well-known Black business districts from the early 20th century. The districts were a successful, self-sufficient society where clusters of Black businesses thrived. Black Americans created their own community and economy, which included a newspaper, grocery stores, barbershops, doctor offices, schools, and much, much more. The area was a Black utopia with a population of about 10,000 people at the time until jealous mobs of armed white residents descended on the community, burning down businesses, looting homes, and attacking so-called African Americans on May 31st, 1921. The massacre killed hundreds of Black residents and thousands of houses were destroyed.
Now you see, folks, this is part of the history that they do not want to come out. They do not want it to be told. They want this history to be erased from history. In fact, just recently, the Supreme Court in Oklahoma threw out the case for reparations, which was filed by 3 surviving members of the Tulsa Massacre. Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, 100 years old, and he actually passed away. Also, Miss Leslie Bennington Randall, 107, and Viola Fletcher, 107, at the time of the recording of this video. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that is shameful that this government and the Oklahoma Supreme Court would throw out the case to repair the damage that was done. But I digress. Now back to the video.
Reconstruction of the district took place in 1922 when around 80 businesses were opened, but by the end of the 1950s, many of them closed due to desegregation. The Haiti district, also known as the Black capital of the South among Black leaders in Durham, North Carolina, became a successful Black community soon after many Blacks migrated to the city to work in tobacco factories in the local area of Fayetteville Road. The land where the neighborhood emerged was initially owned by white merchants, but was eventually purchased with capital that Black residents earned over time. In its prime from the 1880s to the 1940s, the district was one of the most successful Black communities in the country. The city was home to the historic North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company, Lincoln Hospital, as well as over 200 other Black-owned businesses. Upon his visit to the district in 1911, Booker T. Washington stated that he found a city of Negro enterprises whose citizens were shining examples of what a colored man may become. Historically known as Black Broadway, Washington, D.C.'s U Street corridor was known as the epicenter for Black excellence and talent at the end of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. U Street was the home of Black social, cultural, and economic prosperity, despite racial and political tension in the country. Some of the most prominent entertainers, activists, educators, and artists in the country have walked the legendary corridor, shaping its history into what is known for today. Pioneers like Carter G. Woodson,
Zora Neale Hurston, Mary McLeod Bethune, Billie Holiday, Langston Hughes, and more found refuge in Black Broadway to unapologetically celebrate Blackness.
10th Street Historic District, Dallas, Texas. Situated in a white community called Oak Cliff, 10th Street District grew to become a prominent black community soon after the Civil War because of segregation. More than 500 black residents lived in the area by 1900. The strong African-American presence in the district is one reason the area grew and prospered. 10th Street District is home to notable black figures such as blues artist T-Bone Walker and Olympic gold medalist
Rafer Johnson.
As with other black communities in the country, the effects of demolition, construction, and integration caused many residents to relocate, taking their cultural influence and impact with them. The district was listed in National Register of Historic Places in 1994. The area is a great location for preservation work to take place because many buildings with significant African American history remain standing to this day. The 4th Avenue District, Birmingham, Alabama. This southern district became an affluent black business district during the early to mid 20th century. It was home to a plethora of businesses, including theaters, restaurants, hotels, cafes, mortuaries, and more. 4th Avenue District was a haven for many black Americans to be and celebrate themselves in various ways. Not only was the enclave a great retail and entertainment area, but it also served as a location for community engagement and activism. Other prominent landmarks near the area include Kelly Ingram Park, the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, St. Paul United Methodist Church, and national treasure A.G. Gaston Motel. A.G. Gaston Motel is currently undergoing restoration to serve as the centerpiece of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument, which was declared a National Park Service designation back in 2017.
A footnote about Mr. A.G. Gaston. He's a man who rose from poverty to become a multi-millionaire, and he wrote one of my favorite books called Green Power. It is a highly recommended inspirational story on how this man was determined and he rose from the depths of poverty during the Jim Crow era to become a multi-millionaire and a very influential business person. A story we all should know. A.G. Gaston.
Sweet Auburn Historic District, Atlanta, Georgia. Dubbed the richest Negro street in the world by John Wesley Hobbs, Sweet Auburn was a haven for black Atlanta residents before the Civil Rights Movement. The district's cultural and social landscape shaped the black experience in the city, birthing now historic black churches, businesses, such as the second largest black insurance company in the country, Atlanta Life Insurance Company, Talent, and more.
It is also the birthplace of one Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So you see, folks, throughout this country, coming out of slavery, the first generations, the first, second, and third generations after slavery, our people in this country have a history of establishing neighborhoods, districts, communities, corridors, and pockets of very successful, thriving black communities, self-sufficient, thriving black communities. Because you must understand, during that time, before integration, when this country was segregated, we had no choice but to rely on one another. And rely and supporting one another is what we did. And make no mistake about it, our people were so-called set free in this country with no help from the government, with no reparations. So everything we did on our own. And like the great Muhammad Ali said, I must be the greatest. We must be the greatest. How is it that someone could be set free and thrive the way we did with no help from nobody but ourselves? As a matter of fact, the powers that be did everything they could to sabotage our progress. Every other community got help and assistance, not us. And don't you ever forget that. And there were several other communities, many other communities that was not mentioned in this video. And as we create this video, we realize that we are definitely going to need a part 2. A part 2 that we can talk about, possibly even a part 3, when we can talk about those communities like Seneca Village. Have you ever heard of Central Park? Well, Central Park was once known as Seneca Village, a black thriving community where black people lived, worked, and they thrived, and the economy thrives, and businesses thrived. And places like Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia, 7th Street in West Oakland, California, in Oaktown, and of course, Harlem, New York, the mecca of all black culture, Harlem, New York. There were places all throughout this country, this nation, that black people built our own businesses, built our own economies, built our own schools, our own institutions, our own churches. And the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times before leaving the black community. The dollar stayed in the black community during those times for more than a year. No other community to this date has been able to duplicate that type of economic success. You know, during this time, during the era of the Black Wall Street throughout the nation, there was always a saying in the black families that you had to work twice as hard to get half as much. That type of attitude drove black people to do their absolute best in every field. And what happened? We excelled. You'll notice in all those fields that we participated in, black people always rose to the top because they knew that they had to be twice as good to get half as much. And in essence, it drove us to excellence. We need to get back to the mindset that we give our absolute best in whatever endeavor that we pursue. Folks, just think about this for a minute. These thriving black communities all developed some 40, 50 years after slavery. Slavery ended in 1865. By 1920, black people were thriving in these communities. We were building our own communities. Some 40, 50 years after slavery, people who were set free with nothing began to develop these thriving, booming economies. If they did it then, we can do it now. In fact, we must do it now. No one is going to do it for us. Now we know that there's a time for everything. There's a season for everything. Now is the time and the season for us to get back to being self-sufficient. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but before integration, black people in this country were more prosperous than any other people in this country. We owned more businesses per capita. We were more wealthy per capita. Our kids went to better schools per capita. Do your research, and you will find that because our people was forced to spend money with one another and to teach ourselves and to plant and grow our own food, we became a society that was envied across the globe. Many of you may ask, well, what happened to all of these thriving black towns where the economy was booming and black people were self-sufficient? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we will be going in depth into this subject on our Patreon channel, which we will be launching in the very near future. So please stay tuned for the follow-up on this subject. So you see, folks, we have a very rich history of black excellence that goes back hundreds of years in this country and indeed in the world. The Black Excellence and Abundance channel, where black history is every day. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, thou art rich.